your smile. Now the sunshine brings the light. Fill me out with a flame. I will let you in this game. Take me out when I'm down. 'Cause with you I'm safe and sound. 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 I'm safe and sound.
Welcome to the Esports Royal SEA Cup. We're going over the final group, Group B, and to see the results of these teams, the general history, and who should be expected to go through to the playoffs that start at the end of this week. We'll start with AHQ Esports, not only likely to get out of groups to go to playoffs, but also to potentially get to the finals and maybe even win the tournament as a whole. I say this because this Taiwan team won the CGA Ignition event and also came second in the Africa Asia Invitational, losing to Attack All Around in the finals there. The CGA win was really good for them. They had an amazing showing in the Ready Place finals, and they wanted to take that momentum into the Africa TV Asia Showdown that happened last weekend. This This was a tournament that had Vision strikers from South Korea, but also Absolute Jupiter, a real strong team from the Japanese region, and a team that beat AHQ in the semi-finals of that tournament. HQ took a bit of a beating there, didn't really get to show their real strength. Still clear favourites to step out of their groups, but after that loss, will have a point to prove. You would expect them to have dominant results, much like Attack All Around and Vision Strikers had in their groups, but the other three teams in Group D will certainly want to avoid that. Brent Esports is going to be one of the teams. They're from the Philippines, and there really isn't too much to their name. They recently did win the Rise of Legion tournament, but unfortunately it was only a small event, and all other attempts to qualify for much bigger tournaments have been met with losses. Their lack of qualifying for the Hunter Fury event is another concerning sign for them. They're certainly going to struggle against the likes of AHQ, but might be able to string a couple of wins against these other two teams that we haven't mentioned. Moth Team is one of them. They're from Indonesia, and they do have a little bit more experience in some of the bigger events in Southeast Asia, but nothing to show this team being a dominant force, even in Indonesia alone. Whilst they took part in the CGA Pacific Open, they came bottom of their group, losing to AHQ and Team LZ, that is now known as Toda. They also came second in the Garuda Invitational, but there weren't really any teams from this tournament participating, not anybody that was really worth noticing. I'd say overall this is a team likely to take second place based off results alone, but there's definitely a void of potential not only for Morph, but the other teams within this group. Finally, we have Enter. This is the qualifying team from Taiwan, and yet again, it's a team that you certainly won't recognize the name from, but looking at Amenhola, A6, and Popoman, these are players from Super Domineering. They played in the CGA Pacific Open, they qualified for the event, but came bottom of their group, losing to Fives and only one word, who bombed out of Group A. This is a slightly different team, however, and these players did show promise for Super Domineering. It's a great opportunity for them to take advantage against some of the other quiet teams and book themselves a position to get to the playoffs, which are looming ever closer.
This wonderful tournament, part of the ignition, was created by Esports, who power this Esports and Valorant to its highest level. My name is Mr. Applause, and joining me as the first two panelists of the day, Seek and Strike, and Zero. Good morning, yeah, I'm gonna make it out. Scary moment, but we all made it here, and we're excited for some Group D Valorant. Yesterday had some pretty awesome stuff as well. I mean, we saw 7 consecutive overtimes in a row. I thought we were going for 8. I forgot what year it was. You know, it was a really good time. But today, really looking, we got some big names in here. AHQ, Morph, Brent, and I think even Enter looking to prove themselves. We're going to have the Taiwan versus Taiwan matchup. What are you looking forward to in specific?
This is a pretty stacked team, pretty stacked group. You have all these teams who played in CGA. I mean, at that time, Enter was under a different name called Super Domineering. And they have played against all these other teams. I mean, Super Domineering, Brand, they were in the same group as well as Morph, so they know each other. They have faced each other a couple of times before. But AHQ was the most recent winner of the other Ignition series we had for their region, which was the Cyber Games Arena Pacific Open.
Small correction, the second most recent with Africa TV.
Oh yeah, Africa TV, of course, but that's more of an invitational. Cyber Games Open was
Ignition series event, so
yeah, okay.
But an invitational.
Yeah.
And I respect the ones with qualifiers because we work hard for the community.
Exactly, which is how Enter actually made it to the Royal Sea Cup through open qualifiers.
Yes.
So this is one of the more the groups where you have the teams that you have seen before. You know, they're not complete enigmas. You know that these teams can perform when they need to. So this is actually a very interesting group for me, and HQ brand, they look like the favorites on paper, but I think Enter and Morph, they can surprise us.
Yeah, Morph, I mean, when you actually look at the Indonesian local tournaments, they actually managed to take games off Boom Esports, which have been really dominating the region. They've usually placed above RQ, so they've actually also been looking like a really strong team. But of course, you haven't really given them the chance just yet to really prove themselves in the international stage.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting good things. This is very much to me the group that is a bit of the proving grounds, right? These are all teams that are certainly good. They have the level, but because a lot of them don't come from the old other FPSs, or even some of them have not been able to prove themselves in their scenes, they're still here on Valorant to try to show that this is the esports they're going to dominate in.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen AHQ, quite a few of the teams in other groups, really. Attack All Around, they've won a best of 5 versus. They beat Team Tadak, which were known as LZ back then. Only one word as well. It was a pretty kind of close 13-9, 13-7, 2-0 as well last time they met. So they seem to be definitely pretty the strongest contender out of this group. They're going to be the team that everyone's looking to beat.
Yeah, Bren also has been also pretty strong. They won the latest Rise of Legion Valorant tournament. They've also beaten both Morph and Enter before in CGA. They also lost to AHQ in the exact same tournament 2-0. So these teams, they know each other very well. They have met each other, and I think today will be the day where we'll see if they're able to get their revenge, or will it be the same story all around?
I don't know. Have you seen any other really big upsets thus far in the tournaments? A team that you thought should have gone through,
no.
right?
Maybe only on day one, where only one word didn't really perform up to their standards.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because they went -30 on the round difference, losing
Yeah.
all of their matches. So definitely a bit of a disappointing from them. I think Ryan Central is like, oh, the only word you could use to describe them is lackluster, right?
Yeah. No, wow. Ryan is brutal. But
He's brutal. He's got that British type of humor, you know.
bite, right?
But he was completely right. I mean, I was expecting a little bit more out of them. Sure, Attack All Around. Yes, they're the big name. You know, they kind of smacked everyone around with a +48 round difference, I think.
Yes,
Let me just
so
double check. That is the biggest thus far that we've seen today in terms of which team that dominates. Yeah.
That was certainly the group that was, I guess, most imbalanced, though, between Attack All Round and the rest of the contenders, at least when we watched the group themselves, right? If you compare it to the other, even Vision Strikers, for example, a couple teams managed to give them a run for their money, despite the fact that they're the favorites in this tournament. I guess, BBI existing is also a thing, right? And yesterday it was pretty much a bloodbath, except for Boom Esports. But even with Boom Esports, the round difference was not that big a deal. A couple teams did come quite close to beating them in a couple of the maps.
Yeah, they did still finish with that +41, you know.
That's true. Yes,
So, but it was a lot closer between the other two teams. I have to agree with you. Unfortunately, Armory and RRQ were only actually able to draw against each other and losing their other two series. So that's where the round difference is coming from. But no, I completely agree with you, Alvaro. I mean, we've seen a lot of really close Valorants. I mean, 7 overtimes, how can you say that group was not close, right?
Right. Exactly.
Unfortunately, for those teams that end up fighting so hard, playing 38 matches on Haven, 38 rounds in a row.
38 matches. Some say they're
That's
still
what
playing
that's what it
today.
felt like, to be honest. They started in the year 2018, and now here we are. No, but like that just has to feel bad, right?
Yes.
But hey, it's really useful experience,
Yeah.
and we've seen a lot of teams, I want to say thus far, kind of have one stand-up performer. I think it's kind of always been the Jet Operator, right? Just because
Usually,
this
yes.
combo is strong gun, pretty strong agent, and together they can make some really big round impacting decisions or moves.
I mean, frags are just always so flashy. It's very easy to concentrate on the biggest fragger or the most impactful one, which obviously tends to be the Jet. We did see, like for example, I think it was Vision Strikers that their Sova really stood out. Also an operator user, by the way.
Yeah, actually that was interesting because I believe for Vision Strikers, they didn't actually go for a Jet Operator for the most part.
Yes,
If they were running, it was like their second operator. But I believe actually, I can't remember the
primary,
name.
I forgot the player as well, but it was the Sova.
It was the Sova.
Yes.
It was Sova was the main operator. He just relied on that mechanical skill and the
You didn't
aiming.
need to get away. I mean,
No.
you pick at me, I get the kill on you. That's all I
Exactly.
need.
It was that easy. He would just he had the reaction time on them. So, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's all about the entry frags, and especially on the defensive end. If you can put yourself one pick ahead, if you can get that information, if you just get at least one kill, maybe you get the kill on the spike carrier, and that makes the round so much easier for you. But yeah, the Sova, of course, we've seen a lot of as well. Saw a bit of Viper out from Team Tadak as well
That's
yesterday.
very exciting.
Yeah. Do you think we're gonna see any niche picks? I think we've seen every single agent now here.
Yes.
Pretty much. We've seen a couple of Killjoy games,
Yeah.
especially on Haven.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
that's all.
particularly Ambu would run Killjoy no matter what.
Yeah, yeah.
Rafi was a monster on
Yeah,
that
he was
Killjoy.
pretty good on the
Yes.
Killjoy.
BBI as well,
Yeah.
Oitaku as well, really
Oitaku,
enjoying
yeah.
the Killjoy. On Ascent mostly, they even were actually capable of not just playing it in one position. They realized that, hey, the Killjoy's not doing too hot B, and they actually rotated it over to A, which I think is really impressive, to be honest, especially when it's an agent that you typically don't see that much.
Yeah, you don't see that much, but if I remember correctly, there were teams that actually played against the Killjoy very well as well, having the Sova just using the Hunter's Fury. Whenever he sees the lockdown, he just uses his ultimate as well, just to stop it. So it was like a soft counter, you can say. You know, you're using an ultimate for an ultimate, but these teams, they do still have things prepared in case they have to face out the Killjoy. So I'm for what I know, Bren, they don't play the Killjoy at all. Neither does AHQ.
Nope.
Yeah.
They also
Something special
actually,
AHQ, they don't play Jet at all.
yeah, I was just
Oh.
taking a look at that. They don't really play
So
Jet
what's
at
their
all.
operator then? User.
They usually use Raze for the entry instead of Jet,
Okay.
which
They play a bit of Sage still too.
Yeah, they played Sage, but that was on the old patch. So
Yeah, must be.
Hard to
But-
tell. I mean, maybe then they're now replacing their strategies a bit. Of course, you
Yeah.
know, it's limited the stats because the patches are coming really
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
So of course we don't know how they're gonna quite perform on this patch. Maybe they have thought of some special strats for this tournament. I
Like-
mean, it is the
like
Royal
Viper.
SCA Cup.
Like Viper, although
Viper.
we'll see. I have my doubts, but a lot of teams just goes to show you the value of information, right? Especially when you don't have life on the line to get that information, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sure, the Jet can get a lot of info and can safely escape. Even sometimes get a pick, ideally, right? If you're Vision Strikers, I think maybe even sometimes they line up and you get a double kill, right, with the operator. But usually that's not the case. You'd like to ideally have a camera down, the owl drone, right, which is
Or
why
even
we
the
see
boom
so
bot,
much
you
of
know,
this.
to clear
Even
out
the boom bot, yeah, the little boom buddy. He can toss him in. Hopefully he doesn't get stuck in the corner, right? But yeah, he can give you some good intel because people need to shoot that boom bot. People need to shoot the owl drone, and that's all information that you can get. Even the Sage Wall we saw on Split, right, gives you a lot of information. How many people are shooting the Sage Wall? What kind of guns do they have? That's really good information to be having.
That's why most of the matches, yes, you concentrate on the top frags, of course, but you do see some very impactful performances by the Cyphers, by the Sovas, which are particularly deciding for the matches. In fact,
Yeah.
very often we'd go, oh, if they only had a Cypher here, they would have done much better, you know, because he does
Yeah.
fulfill a very specific role there.
It's
Yeah.
kind of a hard thing to notice, right? Because usually when you follow the action, you're almost always going to be looking at the main push, right? Whereas
Yes.
on attack, you're always going to have a lurker, a Cypher, maybe sometimes an Omen. Some teams have been running this Reyna
Yeah.
sort of deal, right? To try and distract, maybe try and
Yeah.
bait some rotations out. But yeah, those duels are really important, right?
Yeah.
Usually if the one or two people holding a site versus a Cypher.
Yeah.
Can you like explain why that's so important?
At the highest level, when everyone is playing at a similar pace or a similar play style, you know, the one that pushes a team over the edge is actually just the information. One player can install two on a single site. That means that on the other place or on the other side of the map, it's 4 versus 3. They can outnumber the opponent just by having that one guy saying, okay, I've got 2 guys shooting at me, you can go B now, because no way they can rotate in time to help out the other side. So having that lurker, having that information gatherer is very it tips the scales in the attacker's favor or the defender's favor, whichever that, you know, can get more of the attention given to him, you know. And if he gets 1 or 2 picks, even better. He just even out the odds even better. He might have caused the rotation even more to his side as well. So people tend to forget how important the lurker role is because it's not as flashy. It's not like a Jet going in and getting kills.
It's only flashy if it really
Yeah.
heavily pays off, right? Because it's a pretty low risk, medium to high reward sort of expected payout, right? The high rewards are very unlikely though. You're most likely gonna get a pick, go for a duel. It's good information to have.
Yeah.
Something that I tend to see though, and that I've been picking up a lot, is especially on a map like Haven, Sova on defense sometimes can feel a little bit underwhelming. Usually because they almost throw him in C, right?
Yeah.
He's the only member in C. Usually you set up for 1 or 2 near B, 2 in A, sometimes 1 in garage. We've seen Sova's really not been able to hold their ground because he can't.
He
It's a
can
Sova.
delay.
he can't delay. He's got no utility. He can shoot both of his arrows and hope for the best.
Shock arrows.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because that tends to be a problem. So I'd like to see some teams try and take advantage of that, right? And just flush the Sova out, because compared to even like a Cypher who can at least throw up a cage, that might be enough to dissuade a team from really going all out, because they might not know what's behind it. It's all about the vision game. But yeah, I think that's a good point you bring out. Maybe that's just a Haven specific thing because there's 3 sites, but
yeah, Haven is pretty hard to defend. You know, having that 3 sites, and you never know which site that they're going to go for, and there's 4 points of entry. There's even garage that you have to look out for. So it's not as easy to defend as the other maps.
And of course, when you are on we're talking here on the defense side, right? When you're on the offense, this lurker role, this information gathering role, has a special advantage, of course, because you are the one that's proposing. Technically, you are the one deciding what bomb site to plant. So the enemy team can't just ignore like this. I mean, we haven't seen this, of course, because this doesn't happen in competitive. But if you were to ignore the lurker, if you say, nah, we're gonna try to defend this site because everyone's here, then you can just plant there. If they don't take the bomb with them, you can't simply decide to play your plan if you're on defense. And we saw a team like Todak or Pepper Rex really take advantage of that factor of the tempo control that the offense gives you.
Definitely, I think the lurker role is. We see some teams don't play that lurker role at all. Todak as well as Paper X and even Resurgence are some of the teams that come to mind when we talk about the lack of that lurker role.
Yes.
But at the top tier, at all these, when we look at AAA, we look at Vision Strikers. They have that one guy, whether it's a Reyna or a Cypher, they will be on that information gathering role. They're playing away from their team, getting as much information as they can. When he needs to, he will be the ones making the sounds, baiting the opponents to get over here.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear about these like wartime tactics, like back in the 1700s, when they're like, oh, we're severely outnumbered, so let's just like run around, blow up, make a bunch of dust storm, really yell, like make it seem like there's a lot more people here. We actually saw Team Tadak, I think, try and do that with the Viper, right? Unfortunately, Boom Esports were a little bit too wise for it. They had a lot of info. But back to the lurker. I think a lot of it can be kind of drawn down to the like just having that threat of a lurker, right, can force the defense to play differently. Because I completely agree with you, especially on a map like Ascent where it's really easy to lurk out of B sites and get kills mid into mid market and over to catwalk. We've seen teams that can punish this no lurker because this allows them to play a bit more aggressively. Whereas with this lurker, you never know if someone's coming. You have to be holding that angle because if you get picked off by a lurker, even if it's a trade, that could really change the attack flow. That could really allow a team to switch up the plan, head through mid, go through A, because they already have that information. So it's so important, I think, to even have someone to possibly be a lurker, even if they're going to play with the team.
Yes, we actually did see yesterday there on the longest match we had with the overtime match, multiple times, it was an Omen particularly that I believe was, I think it was RQ side when they're starting to come back, and actually when they eventually won that match, multiple times you saw their opponents thinking, oh, we have to try to get on the site, we just have to ignore this lurker, completely forget about the Omen. They're like, where's the Omen? He comes from behind, gets 1 or 2 pickoffs. At that point, it's already too late because he's had way too much impact in that position.
Yeah,
you lost because of that.
I can barely remember that overtime match actually.
Ah, really?
Yeah,
but it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was.
I was screaming at the screen, so there's you know how they say emotional memories really stick in your mind?
They
that
do.
was one of them.
They do.
Okay. Well, for people that did miss that, though, we do have a special video prepared for you. See, we here at Epos, we accept that you might not be able to listen to Valorant talks for 14 hours, which is normal. We are sick, but you don't have to be with us. However, for those of you that can't stay for the whole day, we always prepare these special recap videos so you can always find out what we're referring to here on the panel. What is this overtime match? What happened yesterday? Who qualified for Group C? Well, here's a video for you that will explain everything so you can be up to speed and continue listening to us for this Group D analysis. So please, Ryan Central, take it away with your amazing recap video.
Welcome to the Epos Royal SEA Cup and a recap of everything that happened on day 3. The day was dedicated to Group C and the 4 teams within it, that being Boom Esports, Todak, Amri Gaming and RRQ, and 2 of those teams will be going through to the playoffs that are looming ever closer. The team that topped the group and will be first seed going into the playoffs was Boom Esports. They took advantage of the relatively inexperienced rosters by winning all games against Todak, AG and RRQ. They actually came out of groups dropping less rounds to Vision Strikers, which really is a strong showing, and to be honest, something that Boom Esports really needed to have in this tournament. We finished in first place, and we know for a fact that they'll be playing against Blackbird Ignis in the upper bracket quarterfinals starting on Friday. There is only 1 spot open left for playoffs in this group, but the unfortunate side of this is that team will have to run into the South Korean powerhouse Vision Strikers, who haven't lost yet, not only in this tournament, but ever, full stop. Todak, Amri Gaming and RRQ all lost to Boom as I mentioned, so their matchups against each other had to be important. Todak were the team that took the first step towards the playoffs by winning against Amri Gaming. Amri needed to get a win against RRQ to keep their chances alive, but unfortunately can only muster up a 1-all draw in this best of 2. The map that RRQ were able to win was on Haven, which went to a 38-round overtime, which ended like this.
It's gonna be too close to call, but I think he's gonna have it. As it
Whilst it was a feat for RRQ to win a map in this fashion, a draw.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that recap video. I hope you came back more informed than you were before, because you really need to stay up to date with this tournament. Everything is changing constantly. We are in a new scene, and if you really want to follow the new up-and-coming SCA teams, and it's important to follow every single tournament that's seen, especially those with qualifiers, right? Because then we get to see the new talent. I mean, actually, in the Group A alone, we already had 1 qualifier team manage to make it through more established invited teams, which was Myth, of course. So, you know, it's very nice to see this new blood always coming in.
Yep.
And today, in the first match of the day, we actually also have another qualifier team, which is Enter. What are we thinking about this team? Do you think they can actually go toe-to-toe with some of the more established teams in the group?
I think they have a really sick logo.
It is,
I agree,
right?
actually,
It's
yeah.
actually a really, really good
Yeah,
logo.
I agree. It
It's
looks
a
like
boar.
a wild boar,
Yeah, it's a wild
Bobby
boar.
Bhutan maybe,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Getting ready to rush through everyone else in this group.
Yeah. We'll see if their aggressive play style can match, right? Or if the Indonesian team here, Morph, can
hold them,
adapt
yeah.
and maybe what's a good word? Morph perhaps around the aggressive play style.
Well, I really want them to. I think Morph needs to strike them down quickly, right? In an adaptive way, particularly. And then sometimes, depending on the attributes that Enter is showing, they need to shift around their strategy.
Well, because it always depends, right? Because you have to show a lot of strength on attack, but you have to be agile on the defensive end as well. Because if you're not able to rotate for these lurkers, if you're not able to deal with the information that you're given, you're gonna be in a lot of trouble here in an FPS-based shooter, right?
Exactly.
Or a tactical round-based shooter. We've seen a lot of teams though kind of get this half done, right? And that's been, I think, my biggest feedback. I won't call it criticism, but my biggest feedback to the teams, especially like Todak, right, where they play a really interesting comp.
Yeah.
They play a very aggressive play style as they go very aggressively into the site. And then they kind of just hit the brakes, right? Because partially because of their agent composition, right? You think, Zero?
Yeah, definitely. I think we discussed this at length yesterday.
We did. We did.
Having the lack of people that kill.
Yeah.
They can go in a site, but after that, it was just playing by ear. After that, they have no plan of what happens after entering a site. And I think that's something that Todak really needs to fix if they want to go even further in this tournament. But for the other teams, we do see, you know, some elements of having that problem as well, not having a complete full plan or everything that needs to be in that plan to be able to successfully take a round.
So what should be in that plan here? Let's say you're on a more balanced quote unquote map, like Ascent, or more even map, right? Not like Split or Haven, which requires a slightly different play style, right? What should that plan kind of entail?
You need definitely a couple of site blockers, whether it's a smoke or a cyber cage, whatever fits in that category. You need flashes as well. You need someone to be able to get into site and get picks, and then you need after that, that's when the site is open. Then you need to be able to hold them off when they're trying to come from a retake, whether it's through things like incendiary, snake bite, or even just having the fault lines just to slow them down, Sage barrier orb, or even slow orb. And you also need that information gathering agent, whether if it's a Cypher or a Sova or even something else. That doesn't have to be these controlling agents to get information. You can get it through an raise, you can get it through a jet as well, just by playing aggressive. So having all these elements is very key to be able to take a site or retake a site or defend a site.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we actually now know the maps, which is more fully picking Ascent for the first map of the series, and Enter will be choosing then to defend. But we don't really have much time to talk about this because the game is about to begin. We're way too excited. We thought, you gotta get right into that first map between Morph and Enter. Before we go into the game though, I do want some predictions from this panel. What do you think is going to happen in this best of 2?
I think it's really going to depend on the attacking half from Morph. I think that tends to set the pace for the rest of the map, whoever's on the attacking side, just because it can really go either way, of course, but the first half always decisive. So I'd like to see Morph strike hard, strike fast maybe, and I think they are going to be able to take this against Enter.
Okay.
I think this is going to be one of the closest matches of the group. Both of these teams not as established as the other two colleagues in the same group. So I think this will be a very close match between both of them. I think it might be a 1-1.
Okay. All right. The predictions are in, and now we're going to go to our match. So let's see if Enter, the team from the qualifiers, is capable of proving their mettle against a more established invited team and start off with already a win, or if Morph can become the wave that sweeps away the form that is Enter, taking them away completely from their chances to win the first map of the day. We're going to see any second now. Stay tuned as we go to the casters for the first match between Morph and Enter.
Welcome to the Esports Royal SEA Cup. Whilst we are in the group stages of this tournament, I wanted to take an opportunity to look at some of the bigger hitters when it comes to the teams involved, and who to really keep an eye on that you expect them to go out of groups, through playoffs, and to maybe even win the whole event. To do this, I'm going to go through all of the groups and highlight one of the teams that I think is going to do quite a lot. We'll start with Group A, and we'll start with Attack All Around. This is a team that's had some great results across the bigger tournaments in the Southeast Asia region. It's a team from Thailand, and they've been in the finals of the two biggest tournaments, winning the Africa TV Asia Invitational and coming second in the Cyber Games Arena Pacific Open. Both of the finals they played up against AHQ Esports, which we will talk about in a second, with a dominant win 2-0 in the Africa TV tournament and a very close loss 3-2 in a best of 5 in the CGA Pacific Open. This is a team that has a lot to prove. You could definitely tell that they've been watching both the NA and EU scene when it comes to strategies, executes, and what agents to use. And with the balance patch at the moment, I think this is a team that can really adapt and overcome any opponent, but most definitely they'll want their revenge on AHQ if they can get that far. I say that because there's a lot of really good high competition in this tournament, and when it comes to that, look no further than Group B, and the favourites over there, Vision Strikers. You've probably heard of this team. They're from South Korea, and they've pretty much won everything that they've played in. They've had some really dominant results in the Korean tournaments, most notably Clan Masters 2020, and this is a team that plays some really aggressive and exciting Valorant. It comes as no surprise that South Korea has taken a liking to a class-based FPS game, but that doesn't mean at this point that Vision Strikers are just going to have their way with everybody in this tournament. But make no mistake, this is the favourite of the tournament by a pretty large margin. Now we get onto Group C, and it's much more competitive when it comes to the teams involved, but there's not really a specific team that you look at and go, they are definitely getting out of groups and you can expect to see a lot out of them. Out of all 4 of the teams, Boom Esports has had the better results, but they just got to playoffs in the CGA Pacific Open and lost out to Team SMG. It's not really a solid look for this team, and really any of the 4 teams can come through playoffs and not be a super surprise. But since CGA Pacific Open, Boom Esports have been able to win a couple of smaller tournaments at least, and maybe with the meta changes, they might be able to find a lot more solid footing. So expect to see some pretty interesting stuff potentially out of the Indonesian team, but they're not quite at the Colossus level as Attack All Round, and certainly not when it comes to Vision Strikers. Now going over to Group D, I mentioned this team before already, and that is AHQ Esports. It's basically vice versa for Attack All Around. They came second place in the Africa TV tournament, but then won out super closely in the Cyber Games Arena Pacific Open. With that momentum, they went into the Africa TV Asia Showdown tournament, which happened last weekend, where they played up against some of the bigger teams in South Korea, like Vision Strikers, as we spoke about, but also Japan's Absolute Jupiter. Unfortunately, against this team, they lost 2-0 in the semi-finals, not really having an opportunity to show their strength, losing out 13-7 and 13-8. So whilst this is a team that won the most recent tournament that they were a part of, they still have a lot to prove to really show that they're a dominant force, not only in Taiwan, where this team comes from, not even in just the Southeast Asia region, but in Asia as a whole. You'd expect this team to get out of playoffs, but if they run into a team like Vision Strikers or even an Inform Attack All Round, things might be a little bit tough. But these are the favourites out of the groups. But no matter what happens, we're going to have some really great games and no doubt a few upsets along the way.
left.